My name is Kerry Hammond, and I'm your host for tonight's webinar, Honest Conversations, Better Farm Businesses. Now, your conversations may at times feel like the picture on the screen, but they don't have to. Settle in, make yourself comfortable, and tonight we're going to talk about the very best way to manage difficult conversations. So I'm Kerry. I've been a principal consultant at SAC Consulting for about 10 years, and I own and operate a couple of rural tourism businesses with my family outside of my day job. I'm no stranger to difficult conversations, whether at work, with clients, but more often than not with my family or my in-laws about how we run our rural businesses. Over the last 10 years, I've become a practicing coach, a mediator, a negotiator, and now I'm working in mental health fields. So I'm training to become a psychotherapist and a counsellor alongside my coaching and consultancy. One thing that is super clear to me is that most people struggle to communicate well, and most people feel unheard. And that's what we'd like to help with tonight. So the webinar is called Honest Conversations, Better Farm Businesses. And we're going to be looking at how anyone on any farm, any croft, any rural business can prepare themselves to manage a difficult or an honest conversation. I want to make it really clear that this webinar is not only for farm managers or farmer croft owners. It's not only for people who manage people or who handle the money and make the decisions. Now, if that does describe you, welcome. This is still relevant for you. However, this evening is relevant for absolutely everybody who lives and or works in or on a croft, farm, or rural business. Because the reality is that regardless of what power or authority we have at the moment, we're likely to have things that bother us or worry us, things that we wish that we could raise or change, but for whatever reason, we don't. So it could be that you're watching this webinar because you are thinking about wanting to start the conversation about succession. You might have a new idea or want to try out a new system. You might want to implement new technology, spot a fault or a flaw in a system somewhere. You might have a concern about equipment, health and safety. Maybe you feel like you're working too many hours, you're burning out and you're tired. Maybe you want to talk about your pay or your benefits. Maybe you have issues with someone else interpersonally, someone that you work with on your farm and croft, or worst case scenario, maybe someone in your family. The reality is that this webinar is for anyone who has to have any kind of difficult or honest conversation. And in my opinion, that's all of us. So we're talking about something that affects every single farm, croft, and rural business in Scotland, but rarely gets discussed out in the open, and that is difficult, honest conversations. Throughout this evening, I'm hoping to give you a tool, a practical structure that you can come back to and use when a conversation starts to feel uncomfortable, risky, or tense. Communication affects far more than feelings. It can affect safety, productivity, and it can even affect whether people stay in their job or in the industry as a whole. You may have power in the business. You may be a seasonal worker, a child, a sibling, a spouse. Regardless of your role, you see things and you're affected by things where you live and or work. And it's really important that we're able to talk about them honestly so that our farms, crofts, and businesses are safer, more resilient, more efficient, happier, and healthier. Recently, I've been working with a young farmer in the northeast of Scotland, and I've been coaching them through a difficult relationship dynamic in their family. Now, I asked their permission to tell their story this evening, but out of respect for their privacy, I've changed their name. We're going to call them Sam, and I'm not going to gender them. So Sam's family has been running the same mixed farm for 3 generations, And Sam's parents have worked incredibly hard for decades to build that business up, to make it profitable, to make it efficient, to make it sustainable. And like many farms, it isn't just a workplace. It is their home, it's their livelihood, and most importantly, it's their identity. So this young farmer I've been working with, Sam, had come back after studying agriculture. And Sam came back full of ideas, some diversification ideas, and different ways that they could use technology around the farm. There is one conversation that Sam wanted to have with the family that felt much harder than any discussion about new ideas, because Sam wanted to talk about taking the cows off the farm. Sam has no interest in cattle. Sam's ideas and ambitions for the future of the farm doesn't include cows. Sam's dad loves his cows. He's put years of work into creating the most efficient and productive herd. He's invested in it, and he's really proud of them. But he is getting older, and he has less time and energy to be working the herd. There's loads of uncertainty around this. It's a really emotive topic. So who would ultimately make this decision and when? What would that transition look like? What responsibilities would Sam have to take on? How successful could the farm actually be without the cows? What are the longer term impacts? Every time Sam tried to raise this with the family, the conversation stopped before it even started. Sam tried to bring it up with Dad when they were fixing something together in the shed, and Dad just said, "No, not now, we're busy." Another time, Sam brought it up at the kitchen table after Sunday roast. Both Sam's parents were present, and Sam's mum glanced at Sam's dad, went pale, changed the subject immediately, just wouldn't even take it on. It wasn't that Sam's parents didn't love Sam. It wasn't that they didn't want the farm to continue on and eventually pass on to Sam. And it wasn't that Sam's parents didn't believe that Sam could make a success out of it. For Sam's parents, this conversation meant something very different to Sam. For Sam, it was about planning the future. For Sam's mum and dad, it was a conversation about throwing away the life that they had fought so hard to build together. Now, I believe the problem wasn't really the topic. The problem was how the conversation was happening. It was happening at the wrong time, in the wrong place. Sam had no preparation, unclear goals. There was lots of emotion in the family about the topic. And ultimately, every attempt to start this conversation ended with nobody in the family really feeling that they were heard. And the truth is, this kind of situation isn't unique. The topic may vary, they might be big, they might be small, but these kind of situations happen on our farms and crofts every single day. Conversations about succession, workload, safety, money, new ideas, or any kind of change often feel incredibly difficult just to get started. And that's not because people don't care, but it's because the stakes are so high that people really care. Many people are never taught how to have a difficult or honest conversation. And that's not a character flaw, it's a skill gap. And skills can be learned. And that's why we're here this evening. The reality of avoiding a difficult or honest conversation is that we dig in. And when we dig in, we get stuck. Frustration starts to build. And in some cases, conflict will eventually explode, and sometimes explode more than once. The reality is that nothing changes. We just get on with it. Some of you might know the "it's I been" mentality. It's always been done this way. We're always going to do it this way. No space for conversation. I believe that part of this is because often on our farms and crofts, these conversations happen when people are tired, when they're under pressure and stressed, in noisy or inappropriate environments. And these conversations are happening between people with different levels of authority and different levels of power. And it's really unclear in those conversations how to get on the same page. So again, we're dug in and we're stuck. I believe that structure is one of those skills that fills that gap and helps communication. So structure helps us to plan out exactly what we want to say. It also helps to stop those emotions from escalating and bursting out. Structure helps to keep our issues clear and can remove confusion. And it helps to ensure that everyone gets the chance to speak, but more importantly, everybody has to listen. So the field framework that we're going to talk about tonight is a structure that I've developed. And this structure slows conversations down so that people feel heard and solutions ultimately become possible. So think of a difficult or an honest conversation like working a field. Each step prepares the ground for the next step. It provides us with structure that can avoid escalating emotions, it can avoid confusion, and it ensures that everybody in the conversation stays on track. So FIELD is an acronym. F is for finding the right moment. I is for identifying the goal. E is for empathizing first. L is about listening for resistance. And finally, D is about developing agreement. Now, throughout the rest of this webinar, I'm going to take you through those 5 steps. So starting out with F. F for finding the right moment, which is the right time and place. So many difficult conversations happen in the worst possible moments. It might be during a busy harvest, when equipment breaks. Actually, when people are trying to wind down and relax, really bad time to have a conversation. Or alternatively, when people are exhausted. A private conversation planned at the right time is far more productive than trying to raise concerns off the cuff or in front of other people. So the time, timing, and setting are crucial. Try to avoid conversations during high stress moments. And that's high stress right at that point in time, but also higher stress periods of time. Make sure that your conversation is private. So ask to speak to somebody away from everybody else. You also want to make sure you're somewhere where nobody's going to be walking in on you or interrupting. And if you can, maybe think about even putting your phone on silent to ensure that you have that privacy between you. Choose a calm and a quiet place. Your surroundings will help to dictate the vibe, pace, and atmosphere of the conversation. Try to choose a time where there are no immediate pressures or distractions. So if there is a deadline, the end of the day is coming up, everyone's keen to get away for their lunch or their tea break, try not to plan your conversations for right before the moment where people may be having their mind on other things. Make sure that you can plan and prepare both or all of you, however many people are in the conversation, in advance. And always give the conversation more time than you think it needs. It's better to have free time back than to be pushing into people's days. If you ever catch yourself saying to somebody, I'd really like to speak to you and it'll only take 10 minutes, multiply it by 3. Give yourself half an hour. When we talk about finding the right moment, the right place is really important as well. Did you know that up to 93% of our everyday communication is non-verbal? So it's not what I'm saying, but it's my facial expression, how I hold my body, are my arms crossed? Do I make too much eye contact? Not enough eye contact. 93% of what I communicate and you communicate is non-verbal. Think about where most farm or family conversations take place. So I would say number 1 is probably the kitchen table. If you think about the kitchen table, you are literally probably on either side of the kitchen table, facing each other. Psychologically, this in your brain signals that you're squaring off, you're confronting somebody, you're literally facing off, and your brain gets ready for a fight. Those boxing gloves that we saw in the title slide, your brain pops those boxing gloves on subconsciously and gets ready to fight and defend itself. Let's think about the next choice. So if your farm or your croft has an office, it probably belongs primarily to one person. There's probably a desk in that office and a chair behind it. There might be another chair in the room or in front of the desk. Whoever sits in the chair behind that desk automatically claims the power in the conversation, whether they wanted to have the conversation or not. By sitting in the seat of power behind the desk, they've changed the power dynamic of that conversation. So it becomes much harder for the other person to try to claim authority or power in the conversation. They feel inferior. Both of these situations, though totally normal and probably your first instinct to go to have a tough, difficult conversation, it's unlikely to help your conversation proceed in the best way. I mentioned at the beginning when I introduced myself to you that I'm currently a trainee psychotherapist. And we're taught from day one, actually learning counselling skills, that this chair setup is the ideal way to have difficult conversations with people. You'll see they're not facing each other. They are slightly to the side of each other. What this does is it actually gives the impression that you are with somebody, you're alongside them. There's quite a lot of research that what's called shoulder-to-shoulder conversations are incredibly successful. So you might have seen there's been some adverts on TV about a couple of lads at a football game. And when they're shoulder-to-shoulder watching the football game, they can have a real conversation about things that are happening in their lives. Studies also show that when you're driving in a vehicle and someone's sitting in the passenger side, because you're not facing them and making direct eye contact, it takes a lot of the heat and the danger out of the conversation. Another place I would say is absolutely fantastic for having tough conversations is actually out walking. So whether you're walking the fields or just, walking around the farm or the croft, again, this puts you together. There's no power dynamic, there's no confrontation, and you're kind of doing something that feels almost companionable. When thinking about finding the right time and place, ask for permission. Asking for permission, setting out your intentions, and giving an indication of time and place show that you respect the other person. You respect their time boundaries, you respect what they have going on, and you're trying to give them notice. So it allows the other person to gather information or facts that they might need for the conversation, and it helps give both of you enough time to prepare. So examples of asking for permission could look like, is Monday a good time to talk about something that's important to me? I'll try to keep it to around half an hour. After we're finished for the day on Thursday, could I speak to you about X thing? We could go for a walk and have a look at it together. Are you free between 5 and 6? I was hoping to speak to you and Dad about an idea I've had. Could we make some time for that this weekend? It'll probably be about an hour. Before we finish up with the accounts today, I'd like to talk to you about something I've noticed. Could we have 45 minutes together for me to show you? You know the people that you need to talk to best, and you know how they would prefer to be communicated with. Would a text or a WhatsApp message work? Do you need to ask them face to face or give them a phone call? Maybe some people might even be better reached via email. When you make this step, the first step in field, asking for permission, finding the right time and place, often this is what you receive. A fast or immediate response. Usually this falls into two categories: urgency, tell me now, or avoidance, don't tell me. So some examples of that is Monday, a good time to talk. It'll be about half an hour. The response could be, well, what is it? Just tell me now. After we're finished for the day on Thursday, could we go for a walk and look at it? No, I've got plans on Thursday. Just send it to me on WhatsApp. That's avoidance and urgency. I don't want to talk about it then. Just tell me what it is right now. I was hoping to speak to you and Dad about an idea. Could we make some time? Oh, what's the idea? I'm not sure unless you tell me what the idea is first. That's pure avoidance. Don't want to hear it. Before we finish up the accounts today, I'd like to talk to you about something. We don't have any time for that. Just get them finished. Show me it another day. So that's urgency to do with the situation, and then avoidance because they don't really want to handle it. Now, this doesn't mean that the person responding is a terrible person. This is a communication habit that most humans have. We are curious, or we could be anxious. We get defensive. Some people just aren't comfortable waiting. So we either push for the information to come now or never. So if you get one of these responses, urgency or avoidance, what happens? Do you give up? You can't make the next step on the framework. So I would suggest coming right back to the framework. If you get the response of urgency, tell me right now, look through the list, the things that let you know that it's the right time and place. Make a judgment call. Are you in a calm and quiet space? Can you be free from interruption? Has the day or the time that you're speaking, is it low pressure, low stress? Is there any chance of distraction? If you think that the answer to any of these are, yeah, actually, it's quiet, it's calm, there's not too much pressure and stress, and you've had the opportunity to work through at least one, if not two, of the following steps in the framework, then sure, you could go ahead. You could respond to the urgency and say, yeah, sure, let's chat now. But if any of these items are not in place, and if you haven't prepared the next steps, and also if you get faced with an avoidance response, like, no, I'm not free then, or I'm not sure about this, I don't want to talk about that. My best advice to you would be to ask them to tell you when a good time to talk would be. So that could look like, okay, I understand that Thursday doesn't work for you. Is there a better time or day where we could speak this week? And you're handing over the option to them to choose when the conversation happens, but you're putting a deadline in there. You're not just saying, okay, when. You're saying when this week or when before Friday. You give them a deadline. I would prefer to show you this in the accounts before I submit them. I could wait a little later this evening, or I could come in earlier tomorrow if you don't have time today. So again, you put some boundaries around it. Asking for their suggestion, asking them to give you the time and place. It's enough respectful pushback that the person that you want to speak to will understand that you have a reason for wanting this to happen in a specific way and at a specific time. So the key message around F, finding the right moment. The right time, timing, and place increases your chances of being heard, because even the best message fails when it's delivered at the wrong moment. Okay, next in our framework is I, and I is for identifying your goal. So before starting, you want to be really clear about the outcome that you're hoping for. Ahead of the planned conversation, ask yourself, what do I really want to get, or what do I want to achieve by having this conversation? Now, I would really recommend that you write this down. Either a sentence, you could scribble it on a piece of paper, you could type it, you can put it in the notes app in your phone, a couple of sentences, or maybe some bullet points to help you stay clear and remind you of the purpose of your conversation. I want to touch on venting versus problem solving. So, venting is okay for venting to be the purpose of a conversation you want to have. Venting is where we kind of say everything that's on our heart and our mind, and we get everything out. We talk about everything that's worried us or annoying us or causing us problems. What venting does is it releases your emotions, but it activates a lot of defensiveness in the other person. It can be confusing, it can be overwhelming, and frankly, it rarely achieves anything. We do need to vent because if we go into a conversation that might be difficult with a lot of emotion, we carry that with us and run the risk of venting. So, my best advice would be speak to somebody else who's not involved in the conversation before you have it. Get your venting out beforehand to somebody safe. If you don't have somebody else to talk to, you could always write it down. You could record a voice note, whatever works for you to get those feelings out. Because what you want to move towards for a successful conversation with a really good outcome is problem solving. Problem solving creates change. And ultimately, anyone having a hard or difficult conversation is likely looking for change. There's almost always going to be a problem to solve. So, with identifying the issue, my best advice is focus on one issue alone. Conversations become really overwhelming when several issues are raised simultaneously. It's hard to process them and understand what is the most important thing. So, avoid raising multiple problems in one go. Again, have that issue, opportunity, idea, problem written down and clear in your mind. Now, you don't need to sit there with your notes app out. You don't need to sit there with a written script, but it can be handy to have it on you if you need a prompt. Have your ideal goal or outcome also written down and clear in your mind. If you need some help to identify what the real issue is that you want to discuss, I would suggest these 3 questions. So, number 1, what am I worried about? Number 2, what do I want instead? What would I prefer? And number 3, what am I willing to do, or how could I help to support this to become a solution or a reality? Because people don't like being brought a problem. People like to be brought a solution. Is there a way that you could suggest a solution to what you want to bring? The key message for identifying your goal: if you're not clear about your goal, your issue, your ideal solution, and you don't suggest a way to achieve it, the conversation is going to drift. Having clarity before you speak will save later frustration. Okay, the third or the middle part of our framework, this is where we actually start having the conversation. So F and I are preparation. E, empathizing first, this is where the conversation begins. So people are more open to conversations that might feel hard if they feel understood from the outset or from the beginning. When people feel understood, they're less likely to feel defensive. Now, all people have pressures, external pressure, and certainly all farmers and crofters and agricultural workers have pressures. Sometimes pressure is caused by the task at hand, or financial worries. There could be changes in policy, or pressures unique to farming. Some pressures very unique to crofting. And some pressures just universally affect humans. Most issues, most problems arise because somebody is experiencing an external pressure of some kind and therefore aren't as able to be observant or careful of other people's concerns or real health and safety issues or faults in a system, or hesitant to move forward because of the pressure that they're under. So acknowledging upfront first in the conversation that whatever it is you want to discuss, likely is the way that it is because of those pressures, it prevents the people that you're talking to from thinking that you're trying to blame them. It prevents them from having to feel like they need to excuse it or deny it. It also puts you beside them, not physically, but it psychologically makes the other person feel like you're with them. You're not against them. You understand them. You don't judge them. You don't blame them. You're trying to understand. All of this shows massive respect to the person that you're talking to. Again, studies show that people who receive empathy as the very first thing in a conversation are far less likely statistically to become defensive or to attack, to throw something back at you. It primes a person to be open and to really listen to what you have to say, because they aren't having to think of a response that covers all the reasons why. They're not having to excuse, because you've told them that you already understand the reason why. Now, two really important things about empathy, commonly misunderstood. So, number one, empathy is not agreement. By saying, I really, I understand this was difficult and that's how we've ended up in this situation, you're not saying, and it's okay that we're in this situation. You don't have to have agreement for empathy. You just have to understand how you got there. The other really important thing to remember is that empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is not saying, oh, I feel so sorry for you that this has happened. Because sympathy sounds nice on the face of it, but what sympathy actually does is it turns the other person into a victim, whether they ask for it or not. Empathy is different. Again, it's about understanding and being with somebody. Empathy shows that you're recognizing the situation that the other person has found themselves in. Empathy also, allows you to lower their defenses, and it opens that person up to properly listen to what you're really saying. They're not going to be in that conversation trying to formulate a quick response because they feel judged or that they need an excuse. They'll potentially actually be open to listening what you have to say. And please remember, you still have to raise your concern after you acknowledge their perspective through empathy. Some examples of how you might want to start the conversation with empathy are here. So, I know we're trying to keep costs down. Simple. I can see that this season has been stressful. I know that we have less labor than we used to, and there's a lot more work on your shoulders. I know things have been hard since we lost Grandad. I can see how much you've put into the farm or the croft and how important it is to you. I understand that me coming up with ideas all the time must be frustrating, especially if I don't wait for the right moment. I'm gutted that our yield is down due to that flooding, and I know that you must be really worried about it. You must be really tired working full-time off farm and then having to come home and do all of our accounts and paperwork. All of that shows understanding of the pressures that that person is under. But none of it is saying, and that's fine, and I agree with it, and we should leave it that way. This is a really good way to start any honest conversation. Acknowledge what pressures you can see. Show that you've got understanding of the impact that that pressure's had on that person. And that says, without you needing to say it, I'm here with you, I understand you, and I'm coming from a good place. One quick note for you, whatever empathy you choose to start with has to be genuine. So humans have an uncanny antenna or radar to pick up when someone is saying something that they don't really mean or that they don't believe. A BS indicator. Your empathy needs to be sincere and authentic. You will do more damage using false or insincere empathy. Okay, so the key message for empathy, empathize first. People lower their defenses when they feel understood. Empathy is not agreement, it is understanding. You can still raise your point or concern after showing empathy first. Okay, now the penultimate stage in our framework is listening for resistance. And arguably, this is the hardest step for everybody. Listening is something that we think that we do automatically, we think we do well, and genuinely most of us do listening wrong. How many times have you been chatting with someone, not in a pressured conversation, just a general chat? You're listening to them speak, but while the conversation's happening and you're supposed to be listening, you're actually thinking about what you want to respond with, or what you want to say next, or a time that happened to you, or something that you want to put into the conversation. It's a natural human habit, but it does not build good listening skills. The average human hears between 20 to 30,000 words per day, and we typically remember at most 17% of them. I hope very much that you remember more than 17% of this webinar. On average, when we are engaged in listening, 75% of our brain is processing other distractions, some conscious distractions, some subconscious. So things like, what's that smell? Did I remember to lock the front door? When is my doctor's appointment? I can feel a label rubbing on my neck. Oh, I've got loads of work to be getting on with. When is the school play again? All of these things are 75% of your brain is processing that, leaving you very little processing power for what's happening in front of you. Active listening requires your full attention and your full presence. You have to be in the conversation. And crucially, it requires you not to be formulating your response immediately in your head, but to be thinking about, what more information do I need? What questions do I need to ask? And to respond curiously. So responding curiously is about asking open questions. And yes, questions are part of listening, but only if they're open. Open questions tend to start with who, what, when, why, how. They are not questions that you can answer yes or no to. Yes or no responses shut a conversation down very, very quickly. I like to think of active listening like a trampoline. So somebody says something, and the trampoline amplifies it, bounces it up into the air, catches it again, throws it back up. Active listening is this active process. The kind of listening that most of us are accustomed to are like a trampoline with a hole cut in the middle of it. You get on the trampoline to try and bounce, and you just fall through the hole and land on the ground. So passive listening, you absorb some of what you hear, but you drop most of it out. When we really switch on and engage our active listening, you can hear what they're actually trying to say to you. You can listen to someone without really hearing what they're trying to say. Instead, you hear what you think they're saying, that they're blaming you, or they're moaning, or they're judging your business or your work. But are people really doing that? Something that we have to listen really carefully for is resistance. And people communicate their resistance without realizing that they're doing it. Now, resistance is a really important tool when we think about difficult conversations, because resistance is something that we can work with. Resistance tells us what we're talking about is really important to the person that we're talking to. And it often reflects risk, fear, pride, and sometimes tradition. I really like Maurer's model when I think about resistance. I think it's very simple to follow. I'll explain it to you quickly. So Maurer developed this pyramid of resistance. And you'll see there are 3 levels of resistance in this pyramid. So if we start down at the bottom, the base of the pyramid, level 1, is the biggest because this is the most common form of resistance that we have in difficult conversations. So a key sign of level 1 resistance is you see a person's eyes glaze over. Their head tips slightly to one side. They're using that non-verbal communication and telling you, I don't understand what you're saying. That's your cue to slow down and check in with that person before they get so confused or lost that they lose interest altogether. Level 1 resistance requires facts, data, information, and explaining. Think about who you're talking to. Think about the kind of language or the references that you're using. Can you make it more simple? Can you make it more easy to understand? Ultimately, level 1 resistance is, I don't get it. I don't understand what you're saying. Easy to remember. The middle of the pyramid, level 2, is where we say, I don't like it. I understand it, but I don't like it. I don't agree. So sometimes your idea or problem can trigger an emotional response. And these emotional responses are typically rooted in that resistance, fear, pride, or tradition that can cause a person to hum and haw about your idea or actually actively oppose it. And they may have concern about something, about your idea or your problem. They might be concerned that it might make them or their business or their farm look bad or lose status. That's like a pride response. Or they might worry that your idea will risk the farm or the croft. It might risk the financial performance or the health and safety. So again, that's risk fear driven. The emotions behind that level 2 resistance, I don't like it, they get in the way of productive communication. They have to be aired and shared. We want to progress past resistance, but in order to do that, both or all of the people in the conversation need to try to recognize, name, and address the fears that are underlying the I don't like it response. Now, level 3 at the top of the pyramid is the smallest, it's the least likely resistance to come across, but it's also kind of the sharpest or the hardest to come in contact with. The other 2 types of resistance, 1 and 2, I don't get it and I don't like it, are to do with not understanding or not agreeing with a point of view or a way that, you view things. Level 3 is a problem with you as a person. Ouch. Now, I will say it's not always, I don't like you. So, for example, this could be a child, a grown-up child, a young adult child speaking to a mother. Now, the mother is not going to, hopefully, have level 3 resistance of, I don't like you, child. But what that mother does have is a history with their child, seeing their child grow up. And what this does is it gives the mother bias, prejudice, maybe mistrust, a filter that they view the child through. That influences how anything that the child says is heard and received. So, for example, if this is a child saying to a mother, I would really like to talk about taking on more responsibility on the farm. And the mother is hearing that conversation and thinking, you crashed that quad bike 3 times. You lost us an entire flock of chickens at one point. I struggle to trust you with my business. Now, that's not because they don't like them, but it's because there's something about them, their relationship, that they can't quite get on board with, they don't quite trust. Another example could be if you work with somebody on the farm and you suggest, oh, I think I know a better way of doing this. That person may think, actually, you got something really wrong before and I just spent loads of time fixing it and cleaning it up. I don't want to do the same again. So the resistance in saying, nah, I don't think we should do that. It's not because they don't understand it, and it's not because they don't like it, but it's because they've had an experience with you that colours the way that they receive information from you. Now, I'm not going to lie, level 3 is the toughest kind of resistance to get over, because we have to believe and actually accept that some people see us differently than we want to be seen or we see ourselves. However, if you choose to ignore that level 3 resistance, that I don't like you resistance, you're not going to progress forward to problem solving. You're not going to progress forward through the conversation to a positive outcome. The key to dealing with all levels of resistance is asking open, curious questions that come from a good place of needing more information and wanting to understand. Some common resistance you may see is, well, we've always done it this way. So that could be level 2, I don't like it. It could be level 1, I don't get it. I don't get the new way. That's too expensive. That could also be a bit of 1 and a bit of 2. I don't think that's right for our farm. So number 2, I don't like it. You're not ready yet. You need some more experience. That's a level 3. I don't like you. Nobody else thinks that's a problem, only you. Now, I'd argue that's level 1, 2, and 3. Doesn't understand it, doesn't like you. And I don't see the problem. That's a number 1. I don't get it. These responses are protecting something. They protect experience, identity, sometimes even things as simple as finances. Responding to that resistance with curiosity reduces conflict and it reveals useful information. Again, avoid the questions that can be answered with a yes or a no. Enter your conversation straight away. Look at resistance as an opportunity to gain understanding and to find out more about the fears that are underlying. Is it a loss of control, risk, finance, pride, or ego? In gathering that information, can it help you to suggest a path that might feel less scary or intimidating for the other person? Make sure your questions are not statements and try to make sure they are not emotive or confrontational. So things like, but you want to retire, or you're not fit or healthy enough anymore, or do you not even care about our health and safety? These are statements. They are not being asked to elicit information. They're not curious. They will escalate emotions and will likely result in conflict. There are some examples of open-ended questions here. So can you tell me more about why you don't think it's a problem? Do we have an investment strategy on the farm? What's the vision for the croft in the next 10 years? A nice question for getting over the I don't like you resistance. What behaviors would you need to see from me to believe that I'm ready? Have you got any thoughts about why I might find this so challenging? Don't ask all of these. Try not for interrogation. It's not an inquisition. You want to be asking an open question, really listening to the response, and then deciding if you need to ask another one to get more information, to get to the root of the resistance. If you listen carefully, you will learn what matters most to the other person. And 1 or 2 good, careful questions should move the conversation forward to the next and final step. The key message for listening for resistance is listen to understand, not just to respond. Get curious and ask open questions. Resistance is information, not rejection. Really important. So our 5th and final step in the field framework is about developing agreement. So a good, honest conversation ends with clarity about what happens next. Developing agreement is about moving from both or all of your individual viewpoints to moving towards an agreed action that belongs to both of you or all of you so that you can move forwards. To develop agreement, you'll need more open questions. Open questions are the key. Open questions like, is there something that could work for both of us? Or would you be willing to agree to X if I compromise to Y? This final step of developing agreement shifts the conversation into problem-solving mode. It's important to remember you may not, and probably not, to be fair, always solve the problem completely in your very first conversation. But you should get some kind of progress, a step forward, better understanding for you for where to take the next conversation. When you're developing agreements, you need to be really specific in this agreement. You need to clarify who is doing what by when. Vague agreements without a specific plan rarely lead to any kind of real change and often get forgotten, kicked aside, and it feels like a wasted conversation. Depending on what you're trying to get agreement on, you might actually want to follow it up in writing. This will hold everyone in the conversation accountable to what was discussed, and it keeps people on the same page. Now, following it up in writing sounds really formal, but depending on what the conversation was, this might be as simple as sending a text or a WhatsApp after the conversation. So thanks for talking to me today about that broken gate in our castle management system. I appreciate you understanding I was worried about it. I'll organise to get it fixed by next week, and I'll ask them to send an invoice to you. So by following up, you're reiterating the key points, you're thanking them for their time, and then being really specific about what was agreed, by when, and who is responsible for each part of it. Now, there may be some conversations that are about bigger or more complicated issues where you might have to have several conversations and you might need to make an actual written plan following the conversation, kind of like an action plan for next steps. In these situations where you need a more formal agreement, this is something that you would want to have written down and shared with everybody to facilitate that change and to keep things moving. Now, there are loads of different types of action planning things available out there. For some people, it might just be an email or a Word document that captures a summary of what was discussed with bullet points outlining next steps and who is responsible for them by when. Some people, though, do like to use a specific structure or framework, like the field framework that we're here to talk about tonight. Again, to keep people accountable and to make sure that everyone is in agreement and remembers what was discussed. It takes away ambiguity. I've put 3 examples up here. One is SMART goals. You've probably heard of this. The goal has to be specific. You know, what do you want to achieve and who is responsible for it? Goal has to be measurable. How will you know when you've done the thing that you agreed to? Achievable. How can we make it realistic and possible to get there? Relevant. Why is it important to our farm or our croft? And time bound. What's the deadline? I really like WAVE goals. So the W is for why, but it's also for who, what, and it's also about writing it down. So you write down who is doing what, when. Then you take action, you take a step, you work towards it. If you need to, you can visualize what you need to do to get it finished, if we need to motivate some people to remember why it's important. And then at E, you can look at engaging support if you need to. It might be a consultant or a nutritionist or an HR person or someone from the department, whatever kind of support is needed. And then you evaluate it. And I've also got the GROW model here. So you establish the specifics, you think about where you are now, you list out the options of how you could achieve what you want to do, and then you write down the way, what you're going to do, and by when, with that deadline. Some of these will work better in different scenarios and for different types of people. And for a lot of conversations, this is going to be way too kind of high level, formal and specific. But the key message here is when you put the time, the work and the effort into doing 4 steps of a 5-step framework for good conversations, don't let not following up in some way be the thing that makes it drop off. So whether it's a WhatsApp message or whether it's a SMART goal, keep everyone on the same page as to what was agreed. I want to reiterate that developing a small agreement is okay. So progress happens through small, consistent improvements. You don't need a massive decision or to solve the problem in its entirety in the first conversation. You just need to see some momentum, progress, a step in the right direction. Because over time, small agreements build your trust in each other. They strengthen your relationship overall. And they also give you the evidence that using this field framework in your relationship with this person will allow you to have conversations that don't explode or get shut down instantly. So the key message for developing agreement is the goal is not to win. The goal is to move forward together. And this mindset keeps conversations productive. Now, do you remember Sam from the beginning of the evening? So after working with Sam applied the field framework to try to start the conversation with Dad about the cattle. Sam sent Dad a WhatsApp message. Dad, there's something important I want to talk to you about. Can we take some time together on Friday? Maybe just an hour, just the two of us in the office. Sam's dad replied with a thumbs up emoji, classic form for Sam's dad. So far, so good. So Sam had asked Dad's permission. He had sought out the right moment and then messaged Mum. So Sam said, I'm going to be having a chat with Dad on Friday afternoon, probably around 4. Could you make sure that no one comes into the office if possible? It's quite an important chat. Now, Sam's mum immediately replied, really worried, loads of questions. Oh gosh, what's happening? Is everything okay? And Sam told Mum, it's okay, reassured Mum, we'll all speak together once I've had the chat with Dad. Sam told Mum, your help's appreciated. Now, the conversation is planned for Friday. So on Wednesday, Sam sat down and started a new note in their iPhone. Now, what do I want to achieve from this conversation? Really, what Sam wanted to achieve, no more cows on the farm. However, Sam recognised that's too drastic and too fast. Sam thought, well, I want to take over the farm soon, and Dad's not making it easy. That was too big, too complicated, too many issues, and Sam knew that we're focusing on one issue. So Sam decided, I want to start a conversation about what might be needed to consider getting out of cattle and what impacts we would need to consider. That is the identified focus. Sam asked those questions. What am I worried about? What goals do I have? What could I do to support it? So Sam has some bullet points. Personally, I don't want to run a cattle system. I've got loads of ideas for expanding what we do with sheep and arable, and I want to focus on growing what I'm passionate about. However, I know that Dad loves the cows. Dad's put loads of work and money into making the herd something to be proud of, and he'll likely be upset if I suggest a change. However, I think Dad's also getting older and can't do as much of the manual work. In making this list, Sam had identified the clear talking points, but also had identified the pressures and some of the empathy that Sam needed to start the conversation with. So on Friday, Sam met Dad in the farm office. Sam popped the phone on silent, took the landline off the hook, closed the door, and pulled the swinging chair around the desk so that it was shoulder to shoulder with another chair in the office. And Sam told Dad, you've done a great job with the beef herd. It's unrecognisable from 10 years ago. And I've learned so much from you over the years about how to manage a herd. I do want to talk to you today about what you might think about starting to investigate taking the cows off the farm. And I understand this is a hard conversation to have, especially after all the work and the effort and the money you've put in. I do have some ideas, though, about how we could do more with the sheep and maybe with the arable fields. Would you be up for listening to me? Sam's dad immediately became defensive and said, it's not your farm to be making these decisions. So meeting that resistance, Sam asked some curious questions. What is your plan for the next 10 years? Do you want to retire with mum or do you want to keep farming? Eventually, Sam's dad was able to admit that he would like to think about retiring at 75, which was in 6 years' time. Some more questions went back and forth. What do you want to do when you retire? And Dad said, well, Sam, I thought you would be taking the farm on. Sam confirmed that is the dream. I have every intention of keeping the farm in the family and evolving it for the next generation. But Sam would like to investigate still taking those cows off the farm. When Sam's dad asked why, that was a resistance factor again. But it was a great sign because it told us that that was a level 1 resistance. I don't get it. I don't understand why. Conversation progressed, some more open questions, some more back and forth. And eventually they got to developing this agreement. Sam suggested to Dad, can I put together a business plan for the next 6 years? I want to show my thoughts for diversifying what we do a little bit and the impact, immediate and longer term, of removing the cattle. And Dad seemed open to the suggestion. Now, Dad did immediately leave the office and say to Sam's mum, Sam wants to get rid of my cows. And Sam had to smooth that back over again. To give her credit, though, Mum didn't go white, glance nervously at Dad, or try to change the subject. She said, that sounds interesting, and I look forward to hearing about it. If we look at that conversation, several small agreements are in place. An agreement to listen, an agreement to meet again, an agreement on the next steps for Sam to write this business plan. This family have not agreed to get rid of the cows, but overall they have an agreement that this is now something that they can discuss together instead of avoiding or arguing over it. A simple structure can transform difficult conversations, big or small. So remember, field. Find the right time and place. Even the best message fails when delivered at the wrong moment. Identify your goal. Clarity before speaking saves later frustration. Empathize first. People lower their defenses when they feel understood. Listen for resistance. Listen to understand. Resistance is information, not rejection. And develop agreement. The goal isn't to win. The goal is to move forward together. My final thought is that healthy farming and crofting businesses grow from healthy conversations. And I truly believe that better conversations lead to stronger farms and crofts. Thank you so much for your time. As you know, this webinar is and has been confidential, and that is the reason why we have no Q&A function or chat. However, if this is something that you do want to discuss or you need any help with, if you have specific questions or you just want a general chat, I would love to hear from you. You can use my contact details here. You can also use the contact details on the side of every slide to contact the Farm Advisory Service for help and or advice on any topic on your farm or croft. I'm going to leave you with an ask. See if you can try out the field framework for yourself in the next week or two. Remember, it's not about winning. It's about growing a healthier farm or croft through healthier conversations. Thank you.